morning, good morning, good morning. Good evening or good afternoon if you're watching me on the replay. So if you are watching on the replay, let me know, #replay. I know it's early, and so I don't get as many views in the morning when I go live as when I do throughout the day, as it's convenient for you guys to watch. So I appreciate you guys watching and tuning in. If you have somebody that you know that experiences joint pain on the regular, you can tag them in this as well. I think that there's a lot of good things that we're going to be going over today as we talk about joints, ligaments, and tendons. Good morning, Wendy. So the biggest thing that I want to be able to first and foremost talk about is the difference between these two things. We talk about ligaments and tendons. What's the difference? How do we know which one might be a problem or which one might not be? And then, of course, we talk about joints for the majority of the talk today. So the difference between a ligament and a tendon is what they are connecting. Okay, so last week we talked all about muscles, and we're kind of getting into a little bit more in the weeds of muscles. And so we talked about skeletal system in that first week, and then how do we make sure that we have good quality bones and what we can do to protect them. And then we added onto that, because from muscular system it connects into the bones, and then we talked about how there's voluntary and involuntary muscles. We talked about the 3 different kinds. So we're going to be diving just a little bit deeper in today, and we're going to be talking about ligaments and tendons. Okay, so a ligament is going to connect a bone to a bone. Okay, and so you will find these most commonly people think about them in your knee. Okay, so inside of your knee, where you have your 2 bones and then you have your patella that's here on the top, you would have ligaments that cross this way and interconnect these 2 here to allow your knee not to snap, which I know some of you guys just like, oh yeah, I kind of did too. But that's the whole reason why, is we have ligaments and they connect bone to bone. So then that way we can make sure to have stability, and our skeletal system, with the help of our muscles, are allowing us to move in the mobility that we need to do. Okay, so tendons actually connect bone to muscle. And the reason why this is important is because tendons are harder to reconnect if we happen to have a problem with them, because it's harder to connect into that muscle and have that muscle grafted back. And so one of the most common ones that we see is your Achilles tendon. Okay, so everybody says, oh, that's my Achilles heel. Eating late at night is my Achilles heel. Being stressed is my Achilles heel. The reason why they say that is because your Achilles tendon, if you were to pop that, you would not be able to function. You would not be able to move. And so it actually goes from the gastrocnemius, so the calf muscle, down and into the heel. And so that is one of the most common tendons. And so if you ever think, hey, what's the difference between tendon and ligament? If you happen to be crazy like me and want to know the difference between those 2 things, that's what they are. Is that, a ligament is bone to bone, and a tendon is bone to muscle. So the other thing that we're going to kind of dive more in depth with is going to be joints. Okay, and so joints is where 2 bones meet. So just like when I was talking about the knee, what we have in the middle of the knee is cartilage. Okay, and so this is also when you think about your vertebrae and you think about your spinal column, in between each of those discs we have cartilage. And so as we get older, that cartilage does wear down, and if we have things that are high impact, as you guys know, my husband's in the military. He does not jump out of planes, but I have worked with military installations and with lots of individuals that have done that for numerous years. Even just, high impact runners for a long time. The impact and the jarring does, take that squishy gel-like material that's in cartilage and wear it down. And so over time, you actually shrink as you get older, because the cartilage diminishes, but as well as it just degenerates as we get older. And so we're going to talk about some ways that we can potentially build back cartilage, or hopefully recover what we have done. But the biggest thing that I want to talk about in regards to joints, when we talk about joint pain, is, we have 2 different forms. One of them is arthritis, okay? And that's inflammation of the joint. And the other one is arthralgia, and that is actually just joint pain. And so one is more so pain and one is more so inflammation, okay? And so again, this can be anywhere two bones are meeting, okay? So it didn't have to just be knees. It didn't just have to be hips. It didn't have to be, just your spinal column. It didn't have to be just your fingers, or your elbows. But it's anywhere two bones come together. And so when you think about that, when you think about pain that could potentially be causing that, it could be injury. So of course, if we injure something, if we even injure a muscle, you could potentially have joint pain as well, because the muscle is trying to compensate. When we talk about, having a sprained ankle, there's a lots of ligaments that are involved in that as well. And so those strains can cause, pain, of course, illness. And so how many of you guys have been sick before? You've had the flu, you've had this, that, or the other, and you just feel achy. So that is a form of pain as well. And so know that, if you are feeling really achy, it could be something that's viral. It could be something that your body's trying to, just shake off. And so we'll get into immune system a little bit more later. Good morning, Tammy. But with that, it could be injury, it could be illness, it could be stress, okay? And so we've talked about stress in the past, but chronic stress definitely causes pain because your body's in a heightened sense of awareness. And so because of that, you're more likely to get sick, you're more likely to have injury, but stress is one of those things that causes joint inflammation, joint pain as well. Overuse is another one that can be commonly seen as well. Or if you're doing things in regards to exercise that are too quickly progressing. So for example, if you are running or if you are getting into a lifting routine and you go too fast, too quickly. And so we talked a little bit about that last week in regards to that 20%, making sure that you are increasing small amounts, not these huge jumps, not where you go in and you're like, hey, I know the last time I ran a mile and that was 3 months ago, but I bet I can run a mile again, right? We all seem to think that we can do a little bit more than what we can sometimes. And so we put our body through a little bit too much stress in regards to that. And so overuse or progression that is too high can also cause joint pain as well. So some of the treatments, which is funny because some of the reasons why we have joint pain is exercise, but some of the treatments is actually exercise too. So the key to that would be exercising in the right modality, okay? So modality as in form, mode, okay? So when we talk about someone that already has joint pain, we want to have low impact movements, okay? So we don't want to have running, we don't want to have jumping, we want to have things that are very easy to the joints, okay? So easy to that cartilage. And so some of the ones that could be done easily would be the pool, which I know we're getting into the winter time, and so if you don't happen to have an indoor pool, this one kind of gets eliminated. Another one would be the bike, okay? So you can get a really good intense workout without having that joint pain from the bike. Spin classes are a great way to do that as well. Other ones would just be common stretching, okay? So just being able to lengthen those muscles and take the pressure off of the joint in some ways could also help with joint pain as well. The other thing would be weight loss, of course, because if you're having more weight on those joints, they're going to be more likely to be inflamed, or they're just going to have added extra pressure on them. Another one could be decreasing inflammation. So, we talked about arthritis and how it is joint inflammation. So how do we reduce that inflammation? Okay. So a lot of ways is done through diet. And I know everybody's rolling their eyes at me because you're like, oh, great, here we go again with diet and exercise. But it is true. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as just taking a pill and making it all go away. I will tell you, for me, I did not realize that I had a gluten intolerance for years and years and years. I also didn't realize that MSG was affecting me the way that it was. And so I will say I love Chinese food and I would eat it very, very often. And every morning when I woke up after eating it, I would have very swollen hands. And I'd be like, okay, well, I bet it's just the salt, right? But then it got to the point where if I ate it more than once or twice a week, then I would have a hard time closing my hands and my knees would hurt. And this is me like in my 20s. It's not because I have, anything that's degenerative happening. I just had a really hard time with it. And so I realized that it was the processed foods, that it was the high inflammation. And so that's where they kind of linger in ways, is the body's ability to like out process those things. They can linger in joints. So if you have things that are highly processed, things that are out of a box, things that are out of a can, things that have a lot of ingredients that you just can't pronounce. Well, if you can't pronounce it, your body a lot of times doesn't know how to absorb it and get rid of it too. So that can cause inflammation. One of the best ways to reduce inflammation would be hydration, of course. So like kind of flushing it all out. That would be a good way to get all of that stuff done as well. The other thing would be to limit foods that are high on the inflammation response, the inflammatory response. And so those are always the ones that a lot of people are like, but I don't want to give away my dairy, right? So dairy doesn't affect me in the same way that it affects some of you guys. And so I don't bloat a lot from dairy usually, but I do from wheat. And so wheat is something that I have to eliminate from my diet. And it's one of those things where it's like, but I don't want to, but like it's 2020, like, do you want to have the inflammation, or do you want, to not have the inflammation? And so it's up to you. Like, I mean, and I know some people have a good balance between the two because they don't want to give it away because it's something that they really enjoy. And so they limit it maybe once a week, maybe every other week. Because if we have too much inflammation at one time, kind of like I was talking about earlier, your increased likelihood of being sick or being injured increases because of the inflammation that's occurring, okay? And so I was noticing that I was getting sinus infections all the time when I was eating wheat. And I just thought that there was something going on with my sinus cavity. Good morning, Lisa. But it wasn't that. It was the inflammation that was causing, all of the mucus. And so one of the easiest ways to know if you have inflammation to a certain food is to know if, 15, 20 minutes, depending on how allergic you are to it, an hour, 5 minutes, you will have like postnasal drip. And that postnasal drip right after eating is a mild allergic reaction to something. And so if you're having an allergic reaction to something, your body's response to that is going to be inflammation. Okay. And so I have some tips in regards to reducing inflammation. One of them I already talked about was hydration, kind of pushing out those toxins. Another one would be an increase in herbs that you can cook with or that you eat a lot of times already. So if you're eating garlic, it is a great way to kind of reduce inflammation. Another one would be turmeric. So any of you Trim Healthy Mamas out there, you're singing canaries. I know that we have talked about this numerous times in regards to turmeric. It is such a healing herb. Another one would be ginger, very similar to turmeric. Another one would be green tea. And then the last one would be boswellia. And so that one is not as commonly known, but it has been used for thousands and thousands of years. A lot of these can be put into your tea, can be added into a shake or a smoothie if you want to drink it. I know turmeric is kind of one of those ones that you have to kind of warm up to. Ginger too, it's not one that everybody just loves. But hey, you can put it in your green tea, which I don't really care about either. It's not one of my faves, and just kind of like chunk it down, and it's great for an inflammation response. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about was potential supplements as well. And so of course, you always want to talk to your doctor first before you started anything. But I will tell you, for me, I have a family of just having really bad knees. It's just something that we're prone to. And so my knees creak, and that's not something that necessarily can be fixed, and it's not necessarily something that's wrong with them, but I know that it's going to be likely that I'm going to have more and more knee pain as I get older, and just the cartilage in my knee kind of wears down just from normal wear and tear. And so I take glucosamine, and I have found that it has helped out tremendously. And so glucosamine is actually what is in cartilage, and it actually comes from shells, ironically enough. And there's different kinds, glucosamine with chondroitin and all of these different types of things. And if you guys want me to do a segment on glucosamine, I can do that. I do not have enough time to kind of dive into the weeds of it. But I will say, if you are having joint pain, and it could be because of cartilage degeneration, the glucosamine has been something that has helped me in the past. And so if you want to talk to your doctor about that, see if it's something that you could potentially start as well. I know I get the best bang for my buck at Sam's. It's a great buy. I feel like it doesn't have a lot of junk in it, and it's quick and easy for me to get there. So recap, treatments for potential joint pain, exercise, making sure it's low impact, and actually having stretching. The reason why that exercise is going to be great is because it's going to build the muscles that should also take a little bit of that tension off of the joints as well. Weight loss to take a little bit of the weight from the body to where you're not having as much weight bearing on the body and on the joint. Decreasing inflammation, we talked about doing that through diet, and then we also doing that through herbs, and so making sure that you can kind of flush out some of those toxins with hydration, and then increasing the herbs as well. And so those are a few tidbits in regards to joint pain. If you're having any of those, or if you want to tag anybody in the video below and let them know that these are some good ideas to help. If you guys have questions about joint pain, if you guys have questions about any of these things, let me know in the comments below, and I will come back in and comment on them. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys being here, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. If you have any other specific topics that you want to hear about in regards to the body, let me know on that as well. We'll be moving into the digestive system next week, and so tune into that and how we're going to talk about gut health, but then we're also going to talk about just the different aspects of the digestive system. I think a lot of times we think all the time it's gut health, but it also begins with your mouth and saliva, then your esophagus, your stomach, large intestine, small intestine. All of those different types of things are integrated into the digestive system. So tune in next week as we talk more about those. Have a great day, guys.